Welcome to News Briefs. Today is Friday, May 23rd, 2025.
Hello.
We're going to jump right into recent headlines. It's kind of a deep dive across a whole bunch of fields, sports, politics, tech.
Right, trying to cut through the noise for
Yeah.
you. We've looked through the reports to pull out the P stuff.
Okay, let's kick off with sports. Combat sports had a pretty big week.
Uh-huh.
In the UFC, Michael Morales kept his undefeated streak going, beat Gilbert Burns.
Yeah, and that's apparently really shaking up the welterweight rankings, a potential new contender there.
And you also had Della, Madalena, and Silva hitting the pound-for-pound lists for the first time.
Exactly. That's the ranking across all weights, so it's a pretty big deal, a major recognition of their skill level.
Definitely. Okay, switching to boxing. There's a lot of buzz around Jake Paul fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.,
Hmm.
and experts are debating who Canelo Alvarez should fight next, Terrence Crawford or maybe even Paul.
Yeah, it shows that mix of like pure boxing versus the big crossover appeal fights.
And get this, Holly Holm, former UFC champ, she's actually going back to boxing, signed with MVP.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you see these promotions pushing for those cross-sport matchups more and more. It's about marketability, too, not just the belts.
Right, right. Okay, from the ring to the track, F1 saw Max Verstappen win again, this time at Emilia-Romagna.
Setting things up for Monaco next, which is always tactically fascinating.
But the big story might be in IndyCar. There's a pretty major scandal.
Ah, yes, the Penske drivers. Big penalties.
Yeah, for rule violations. There's something about the push-to-pass system, and it's making people look back at the 2024 Indy 500 results.
Definitely casting a shadow. Questions about finishes, including pedo awards, it really puts the integrity of a huge race into question.
And in basketball, the NBA playoffs are getting intense.
Oh, yeah.
Oklahoma City Thunder are up 2-0 in the West Finals. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is just, leading the charge.
He's been incredible. And then in the East, wow, that Pacers Game 1 win against the Knicks.
At Madison Square Garden, too. What a dramatic finish.
Really delivering the excitement. And can't forget the WNBA Caitlin Clark's performances are still drawing massive attention.
Okay, let's shift over to U.S. politics and the economy.
Right.
So, the House passed President Trump's tax cuts bill, though projections are saying it'll add quite a bit to the deficit.
That's the forecast, yeah. And President Trump also had meetings with some big business leaders,
Right.
and notably with the Syrian president.
And related to policy, the Supreme Court decision. This seems significant.
Very, allowing the administration to strip temporary legal protections from, I think, around 350,000 Venezuelans here in the U.S. It's a major immigration policy shift. Huge impact.
Wow. Okay. On the economy side, Bitcoin hit a new record.
An incredible one. Over $111,000 this week.
Crazy numbers.
Yeah, but it's interesting. You see that against some mixed economic signals elsewhere, like the preliminary PMI data for
The
May.
PMI, Purchasing Managers Index, right, business conditions.
Exactly. It was kind of mixed in the Eurozone and the UK, some contraction. But the U.S. actually saw improved PMI,
Oh, driven by what?
mostly domestic demand, it seems. But tariffs are making businesses cautious about international trade. And Target, well, they lowered their sales forecast for 2025.
Okay. World events. Some positive news out of Gaza.
Yes, the release of Israeli-American hostage Eden Alexander by Hamas, and also the first aid trucks finally got into Gaza after months. Followed a lot of international pressure.
That's good to hear. On a tougher note, though, here in the U.S., security incidents.
Unfortunately, yes. A shooting reported outside CIA facilities in Virginia, and tragically, 2 Israeli embassy employees were killed in a shooting outside the Jewish Museum in D.C.
Just awful. Really underscores ongoing tensions and security worries, doesn't it?
It really does, both globally and, well, right here.
Okay, science and tech. Google's rolling out its AI search mode more widely.
Yeah, to all U.S. users. So you'll see that generative AI popping up more in just your regular searches.
Yeah.
And then it's moving on legislation for stablecoins.
Trying to regulate those cryptos pegged to regular currency.
Exactly. And in science news, this is kind of wild, a study found clownfish are actually shrinking.
Shrinking. Why?
Marine heat waves seems to be affecting their growth or metabolism. A worrying sign of climate change impact.
Wow. And also, research linking oral herpes, cold sores, to a higher Alzheimer's risk later.
That's what a new study suggests, yeah.
Yeah.
And on health policy, there were new statements from the Trump administration on COVID vaccine policy. Plus, the usual general health advice floating around, like tips for managing attention span.
Always relevant. Okay, quick look at culture. A new documentary series on Martin Scorsese.
Yep. And reviews are coming in for the latest Tom Cruise mission. Impossible. Spike Lee was also spotted at Cannes.
Ah, Cannes season. And in religion.
Reports mentioned a new American Pope, Leo XIV, and that VP Vance delivered an invitation for him to visit the U.S.
Interesting. And just quickly on regional stuff, saw headlines about a historic store closing in California, typical weather watch for places like Miami.
The usual local cycle.
And just for context, yesterday, May 22nd, was Novak Djokovic's birthday, also the anniversary of Victor Hugo's death, and the founding day for Cruz Azul, the soccer club.
Right, just a little historical context for the week's events.
So when you hear all this, sports, politics, tech, these global events, scientific findings.
Yeah, think about how these different pieces, these stories we've touched on, might actually be connected. They don't happen in isolation, you know.
How do these shifts and incidents influence each other? And maybe how does seeing those connections give you a clearer view of this, well, this rapidly changing world we're in?
It's about trying to see the bigger picture, the threads tying it all together.
Until next time.